Happens often enough, but every time it happens, it's an exciting thing. Somebody comes to the shul, they come to put on tefillin. They come for one time. It's one time I want to put on tefillin, and then they come back. I want to keep Shabbos. I want to keep kosher. I'm thinking of one specific individual. Just like he happened to come here on a rainy day, and he needed to. He just thought he wanted a blessing that day. He put on tefillin, and one thing led to another. The Torah says this: one mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, and the question is, what is that? What is that? Where does that come from? What is it exactly that causes and fosters this kind of growth? And how can we tap into it? So this week we have an additional Torah portion, Parshas Para, where we read about the laws of purity and impurity. The Torah talks about various kinds of purity and impurity, and the most severe of them is coming in contact with a dead body. And the Torah says that if someone comes in contact with a dead body, in order for them to become purified again, they have to be sprinkled with the ashes of a parah adumah. How does that work? So basically, they take a cow, which is completely red, and can even have two black hairs. It has to be a cow that was never used to work for anything else. And the cow was slaughtered on Har HaZeisim and the Mount Olives, and then it's burnt, and then its ashes are mixed with water, and then the third day after the guy came in contact with the dead body, he's sprinkled with the ashes. The seventh day after he comes in contact with the dead body, he's sprinkled the ashes. Then he goes to the mikveh, and he is then again pure. And this law the Torah describes as a chok, as a super rational law. One of the reasons that it's called super rational is because, the most famous reason is because the Kohen who administers this process becomes impure, but the guy who is given the ashes, he becomes pure. So it's considered a super rational thing. It makes you pure, makes you impure. But I want to focus tonight on something else, which is relevant to what I started with, which is the kind of energy that fosters growth. There was a famous teaching in the Talmud, Rabbi Yeshua ben Kavsoi. He said this: I always used to think that in order to make someone pure, you have to have one Kohen to make each person pure. So it has to be 1-to-1. One Kohen for each impure person. Because it says in the Torah, the pure one will sprinkle on the impure one. So I always understood that it has to be 1-to-1. If there's 10 David Cohens and the 10 Moshe Levins, then you could purify all 10 of them. If you have 10 David Cohens, you have only one David Cohen, then you can only purify one. I thought, in other words, Rabbi Yeshua ben Kavsoi was saying that purity and impurity is sort of like a struggle of, let's say, of two armies facing off against each other, and the stronger army wins. So if there's 1-to-1, the purity overcomes the impurity, and then it could work. But then, says Rabbi Yeshua, I found in the treasury of Yavne that it's possible for one to purify many. It's possible for one person to purify many people. This I discovered, he says, in the treasury of Yavne. What's the treasury of Yavne? What is that? So Talmud says that in the 70 years, in the Common Era, 70 years, what's it called? CE. 70 years CE, thank you. No, I never said it. The temple was destroyed by the Romans, and before the temple was destroyed, the Romans laid siege on Jerusalem. And besides the problems of the Romans laying siege and attacking and pillaging, estimated about close to 1 million Jews were killed, maybe over 1 million Jews were killed at that time. Besides that, there was also another problem. The problem was the Jews themselves were fighting. The Jews were fighting on how to deal with the Romans. Some Jews wanted to fight with the Romans. Some Jews wanted to make peace with the Romans. And it was very, very, very vicious fight. So much so that those who wanted to war against the Romans did not want anyone leaving the city and send the wrong message to the Romans that we want to make peace, because they wanted to fight. And one of the greatest sages of the time, the greatest sage of the time, was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai wanted to speak to Aspasianus, the Roman emperor, general, and tell him that the Jews do want to make peace. But he couldn't get out of the city. So he had a nephew who was part of the leadership of this group. He was the head of them, thank you. And he, Rabbi Yochanan, wanted to ask him for permission to leave the city and talk to Aspasianus. But his nephew said at this point it's not going to work. It'll be dangerous for him to say it's okay. So, but he told him the following idea. The following idea was this: he should pretend that he got sick, and the rumors, he was already very elderly anyways, and they should spread the news that he got sick. And after he gets sick, they should spread the news that he died. And after he dies, you're not allowed to leave a dead body overnight in Jerusalem. So they should then take the body outside the city. That was the plan. And so they did this, and the students brought him outside Jerusalem in this coffin, and he meets Aspasianus. They had a remarkable conversation. Aspasianus was very impressed with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai famously asked him for three things. He asked him to save Yavne. Yavne was a city full of sages, and he asked him to to find medicine for Reb Tzadok, who was fasting incessantly to hope with his fasting and praying to stop the destruction of the temple, and he got sick because of it. To find a cure for Reb Tzadok, and to save the dynasty of Rabbi Gamliel. Was he from Yehuda?
Yeah, he was from Hillel.
He was from Hillel. Hillel was from Yehuda. So it's the same to say like the Davidic dynasty. Is that what the idea was?
Yeah.
Okay. To say the Davidic dynasty. So that was his request, and everyone wonders if he already speaking to the emperor, he's speaking to the general. He says, "What do you want?" So why didn't he ask him? Just go home, go back to Rome, leave us alone. Why did he ask for that? So the Talmud answers, because tafasta umubali tafasta. You try to ask for too much, you get nothing. Another answer is also that there was another Roman general that he wanted to know if this was a good idea to join this attack on Jerusalem. Apparently he had suspicion that this was not such a mitzvah, not such a good idea. And he shot an arrow. Nero Caesar shot an arrow at Jerusalem. He shot an arrow actually not at Jerusalem. He shot an arrow to the east, and the arrow went to Jerusalem. He shot an arrow to the west, and it went to Jerusalem. He shot an arrow to the north and the south, and the same thing. Every time he shot an arrow, it went to Jerusalem.
Wasn't it Nebuchadnezzar?
I don't think so. No. So because of this, but you would know better. But I don't think so.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So, but because of this, he converted to Judaism, and actually his grandson was Meir. Meir was his grandson. So Rabbi Yochanan knew that the temple was already decided in heaven. The temple is going to be destroyed, and therefore there's no point in asking for that. But instead, he asked to spare the city of Yavne. What happened in Yavne? In Yavne, there was a lot of the Judaism that was so familiar to us today was created in Yavne, meaning the idea of a synagogue replacing temporarily the temple and being a center of Jewish life was something that was formalized in Yavne. Much of our prayers was formalized in Yavne. The courts every month would announce when the new month is, the new year. That was continued in Yavne. So Yavne was a place of great scholarship that continues today. But the words that Rabbi Yeshua said was, I found in the treasury of Yavne. In the Talmud, Yavne is mentioned many times, but this is the only time the Talmud talks about the treasury of Yavne. What's the meaning of the treasury of Yavne? So the idea is this. Think about it. The Romans, they had their time, their 15 minutes of fame in history, and then they're out. I mean, you could find Romans in the museums today. But what was created in Yavne, you find in every corner of the world. You find Jews that are excited about Yiddishkeit, about Judaism, communities, men, women, and children of all ages, doing mitzvahs, learning Torah, all over the world. And all of that is a result of what happened in Yavne.
We're up 6% this year, actually.
Interesting. So Yavne is not just a place. Yavne is described as a oitzer, as a treasury. It's called a treasury because not just because it preserved something, but it teaches us something about the significance of who we are and the decisions that we make. I'm thinking tonight about my Rosh Hashiva, who passed away this week, just passed away day before yesterday, Rabbi Zalman ben Rafal Volshansky. He was Rosh Hashiva in Morristown, New Jersey for many, many years. And Rabbi Yeshua says that I learned in Yavne that one person can make many people pure. It's not Kemeser. It's not. I see what happened in Yavne. In Yavne, there was a few sages, and the Romans were hundreds and thousands and millions of Romans. And yet, what happens is that Rome dies, and the Jewish people. What happened in Yavne? It kindled flames that kindled other flames and other flames and other flames, and continues to burn and shine till today. I'm thinking about Rabbi Volshansky, not just the many thousands of students that he taught, but personally, like myself, like what he gave to me personally. And when I came to Morristown at first, I was in Morristown back when there were dinosaurs in 1994, 95, 96.
Okay.
There was dinosaurs. People didn't really have cell phones. Not many people had cell phones.
No cell phone that time?
No. I mean, there were cell phones, but it was not as common.
The cell phone came up in like 1999, 2000.
It was much more common then, yeah.
Payphone.
The payphones. My Beryl was with me in Morristown. He remembers Rabbi Volshansky. Rabbi Volshansky, I was coming from yeshiva that was very, very, very like stark, as I say in Yiddish, very strong yeshiva. I was coming from Brunois in France, very strong yeshiva. When I came to Morristown on Thursday night, my first Thursday night in Morristown was a bit of a shell shock. Like people I never saw before, yeshiva students with cartons of cigarettes and with kegs of beer and foul language. And I was like, and to come, we're having a farbrengen. Like, that's not a farbrengen. In Roa, we were like in a cellar, and there was mashpia, and we would sing a niggin, and we got into it. And it was just like a whole like, whoa, what? This is a farbrengen. These are yeshiva students. So I was like a little bit like displaced. So one of the Rosh Hashivas, Melch Tzibal L'Sholem, he said to me, "There's a great advantage you have over here that you didn't have in Roa. The advantage is that here you're doing things by yourself, not because of the atmosphere," which was wise words. Rabbi Volshansky, he called me over. He called me over, Rabbi Volshansky, and he said to me, this is right after the Rebbe's stroke. He said, "Moshe, I want you to memorize the Gemara, Rashi, and Tosfos of the chapter of Talmud that we were studying at the time, chapter Meruba in Bava Kama." So I'm looking at Meruba. Meruba means so I'm thinking like that's a pretty big ask. That's what I'm thinking to myself, and I'm going to ask him like, and what are you going to give me for that? That's what I was going to ask. That was exactly what I was going to ask. That was what I was going to ask. And he said to me, with which I realized in retrospect was must have been a deep place in the neshama because it stayed with me. He says, "Do this for the Rebbe. Do this for the Rebbe. In other words, don't ask who it's for. This is for the Rebbe. Something the Rebbe wants." And what they gave me a different atmosphere. I was now on a mission. I had to memorize this chapter of Talmud. The previous Rebbe describes that in the Talmud there's certain Tosfos has some commentaries which are, he calls them stomach-sized Tosfos, because Tosfos like sometimes like small and narrow, and some Tosfos are like wide and long, and Meruba has many stomach-sized Tosfos in. But so Volshansky put me into the stomach-sized Tosfos, and that's what I was submerged in middle of this atmosphere, which wasn't the best. It was a challenging year for Morristown. Morristown had many good years, and that year it wasn't such a good year. So what he did was he looks at the whole yeshiva, and he says, "This guy, I need to help this guy," and I made it, and he put me in a direction. More humorous story of Volshansky. I was in Morristown, and I thought I was very smart, and he gave a class once, and he was very passionate when he gave a class. He was very into it, mean, some Rosh Hashivas, they speak in a very soft and subtle way. Not him. He was like fire and brimstone. And this is what Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, and this is what the Treasury says, this is the Gemara. Wow, amazing. And I just realized that his insight in the Talmud was going to create a new insight that I had in the Talmud. And I wrote about 10 pages explaining my new insight in the Talmud based upon his class. I presented it to him. Oshansky just wanted to look at what I wrote. He looks at it, looks at me. I think that good. He looks at me. He looks at it. He says, "Moshe." He says, "Yes, I think I have created a monster." In other words, you are way off. But he did it in such a kind way, in such a friendly way. So even though it was a big blow to my ego, it didn't like derail me. It was like, okay, all right, fine.
What happens if people don't learn and like don't follow up?
So
Kick them out from the shiva?
The yeshiva. Okay. So the point is like this. The point is that Yavne, Rabbi Yeshua said, I learned from the treasury of Yavne. The treasury of Yavne means that Yavne is something that is not just a place, but it's something that caused a revolution of Judaism that still continues till today. It's not just one place. In fact, there's another text in the Talmud. A text in the Talmud reads, I found in the air of Yavne, the atmosphere of Yavne. There's something that you can give someone with specific, ideas, words, customs, stories. Then there is something you give someone with the air that you breathe, with the atmosphere that you create. And that's something that Rabbi Shansky Vashom, that he succeeded in doing for many people, including for me. He put me in a different atmosphere. I wasn't around there was no cigarette cartons and beer and kegs of beer anymore. I was on a mission. Anyway, so this is what Rabbi Yeshua learned there, that one person can purify many people. He learned that the power of good, is eternal, it's infinite. It's not just one little thing. There was a great Baal Musar named Shimon Shadron. He was once taking his kids to the doctor, and he's a very gifted speaker. People come all over to hear his lengthy and full of very assisi, very juicy speeches. And one time he said the following. He said, I was going to the doctor with my kids. On the way to the doctor, I meet my rabbi. My rabbi's like, what are you doing? I'm like, taking my kids to the doctor. He says, yeah, but what are you doing? Taking my kids to the doctor. Don't you realize what you're doing? I said, what do you mean? Is first of all, you have to realize you're doing an act of kindness to your children. You're also doing an act of kindness to your wife because she doesn't have to take them. You're taking them. Third of all, and most importantly, you're listening to your children. You're talking to your children. Do you realize that right now you're building their future? You're creating who they're going to be. This is not just a walk to the doctor. You have to realize this action is something that has a far greater repercussions that go in the future. So this is what the Torah wants us to think about. In this week's Torah portion, that one person has the power of many. And this is something that we see from the Rebbe, I don't think as any parallel in history, but the Rebbe teaches us about this concept. Think about it. Think about my grandfather, Rabbi Fogelman Lashon, going to Worcester, Massachusetts, and there's nothing there. There's nothing. And he has to go and he has to create Judaism. He's like, you could think you're like a lonely guy. No one understands you. They think you don't understand them. And you're going to bring them Judaism, and it doesn't make any sense. How is it going to work? There's another message here that we learned from the parad of the red heifer. The Torah says the ashes should be mixed with water. What does water represent? What's ashes represent? Ashes represent the end of something. Ashes are about a period of life that's ending. A person gets married, so the end their time of being single. A person has a child, and their time of they become a father. A person passes away, they end their time in this world, they begin their time in the next world. Wherever the sun sets in one place, it rises somewhere else. So the idea of ashes is the idea of the conclusion of something. The idea of water is the creation of something new. A person is born in water. The world was created, and still is covered majorly with water. The water causes things to grow. Water represents life and growth and renewal. And ashes represent the end of something. And in a personal level, you could be depressed, you could have an addiction, and there's a part of your life that you feel like you're stuck and things are over. The Torah says always mix the ashes with water. Always realize that where you are right now, and things have taka, it seems, have you come to a full stop, you're stuck somewhere, you should add water. And that's what the Rebbe instructed his students and anyone who would listen. Share the water. The Jewish people after the Holocaust, a lot of ashes all over the world. There's things about 6.5 million Jews that were killed. And the Rebbe enters over here, and the Rebbe says these ashes, they are ashes. But you have to put water, and to go into this town, which it doesn't seem like anyone in this town is interested in anything in Judaism. But the Rebbe says, no, bring the water, you'll see rejuvenation. My cousin, Rabbi Yosef Levin in Palo Alto, he was having a very difficult time in his career, for many reasons, and he was by the Rebbe for a Shabbos, and he felt like the Rebbe was talking to him personally, and it was something that really changed the future of Chabad in Palo Alto and the other institutions that were created by Chabad in Palo Alto. The Rebbe says a young man is in a valley, and Palo Alto is in the, what's it called, the San Fernando Valley? Different valley. Which valley? I don't know. It's in a valley. Young man's in a valley. That was speaking about the Haftorah of Ezekiel, the valley of the dry bones. And Hashem says to Ezekiel, what do you see? He says, I see lots of dry bones. And so what do you, so said similarly, a person's in a city, and he feels that everyone around him is like dry bones, and they're very dry. They're not interested at all. And the Rebbe said, so Hashem tells the prophet, speak to the dry bones. Tell the dry bones, listen to the word of Hashem. In other words, tell them words of Torah. Share words of Torah with them. And you'll see rejuvenation. You'll see that that life comes to them. You'll see it's not the way you think, that they're very dry and there's no one interested. Just add, in other words, in the context of this week's Torah portion, you see ashes, but add water. You see something ending, but realize that there's always a power to begin again. Just because something is ended doesn't mean it's over. On the contrary, you see ashes. The ashes mean the end of one period, but that means it's a power not to continue, a power to cause a renewal. Where you don't be afraid of the ashes. There is pain, there is mourning, but where there is ashes and there is mourning, there's also something new. There's also renewal. And he came back to Palo Alto. He said that there was this guy he used to always have a cigar with every week. They used to have a cigar together. And when he came back, he says to this guy, and he says, Joe, you want to learn something about the Torah portion this week? They're like, all right. He shares the Torah idea of Torah with him, and wow, that was interesting. And it changed him. And it changed the rabbi. And it changed other people. It's this idea of, Rabbi Shua learned in the ear of Yavne, in the treasury of Yavne, the treasure that each of us has, and the treasure every Jew has. We just need to add the water. To add the water until, as we'll see, I learned in Maimonides, the conclusion of Maimonides the other day, the Ram concludes that Mashiach will come and the whole world will be full of knowledge of Hashem like water covers the ocean bed. So Mashiach sees happen immediately, the Kar of Mamish. And any questions or comments or criticism or tomatoes?
So it means one coin can save 1,000, right? One coin can make it to 1,000. But
yeah.
this and we're living on the place like coins less and less every time. Why like this? Like not coins so much.
The coin?
Coin, yeah.
Coin there's a mitzvah. Well, you could put a coin in a stock box, you could tip the scale in Mashiach. The Ram says the world's on a scale. Half mitzvah, half the opposite. One good thought, one good word, one good action could tip the scale and make Mashiach come. It's not just a coin. The coin of fire.
Yeah. The coins just have a huge responsibility, but it's